Okay, let's start. Can you see my screen and hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so now here I'm going to share the PowerPoint. I hope you also can see
Good
the
evening, sir.
PowerPoint. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Okay, so I'm going into, okay, listen, one thing, so I will be going into the full screen mode. As you know, when I'm going to the full screen mode, I cannot see whether I got muted or anything like that. So if you see that my mouse is hovering, but you cannot hear me, just let me know then and then, okay? So that I can solve the problem or issues, whatever I have. Okay,
Okay, sir.
so good.
Okay,
So thank you. Today we will be switching to a new topic, a very basic topic that is called innate and adaptive immunity. So far, maybe in the first class or so, I mentioned that immune response could be divided into two different types. That is called humoral immunity and cell-mediated immunity. Okay. So the basic thing was in that classification was that when it was antibody-mediated, as antibody is remain dissolved in blood serum, so that we can call that immune response as humoral means liquid. On the other hand, if some cells are involved, such as macrophage, neutrophil, basophil, sorry, not basophil, eosinophil, etc., or dendritic cells, then we can call them as cell-mediated immunity. So that classification was based on that fact, what type of cells and liquids, etc., molecules, etc., are involved, based on that. But today we are going to categorize or classify the immunity into two broad categories that is based on their functionality. Okay, that is called innate and adaptive immunity. Mostly we will be talking about the innate immunity today, as adaptive immunity will be there. As we have already talked about adaptive immunity, I will show you how, and I will try to understand the difference between innate and adaptive immunity. In a very simple word, innate thing, if you forget about the immunity, you can use the term innate for those things which is actually kind of a common for everybody, and we do not have any control over these things, and those things do not change over time. Generally, say for example, everybody, you, me, an American, white American people, black American people, everybody has two hands, two legs, two eyes, one nose, 2 ears, etc. So those you can say that innate quality. And you see, these things do not change based on the fact what is our gender, where I was born. Say we are mostly born in India. Somebody may be born in some European country or US or whatever. But everybody has the same thing: two hands, two nose, one nose, 2 ears, etc., etc. If you go into the interior cell, you also see the one heart, two lung, two kidneys. These are our innate things. There's no change on those things. And with time also, you cannot expect that those things will change. Forget about any accidental scenario that I'm not thinking about. So gender, location, race, religion, all this thing has no relation with these qualities. On the other hand, if you think about adaptive immunity or anything adaptive quality, means what we acquire in our lifetime to adapt ourselves with the changing environment. Say, for example, some of you are here who came from Bengali medium, and some of you maybe are convent educated. So a person who is going to the convent school, he or she sees that everybody is speaking in English. The ma'am, sirs, schoolmates, they're greeting each and one to another in English, all the time speaking in English. So if you have to survive in that environment, you have to, and you will be very proficient in that language. On the other hand, a person who is going into a Bengali medium school, and that is also in a very remote area of some part of West Bengal or India. There is English is a class, but other than that, everybody generally speaks in native language, in Bengali, in maybe in some places in Hindi, etc. So you need not to learn English to communicate with other people. That means you need not to learn that particular language to survive, to adapt yourself in the environment. So that's a chance. That's why those guys may be a little less proficient in English. So that is not their fault. What just happened that you need not to adapt yourself. That's why you are a little less, a little lagging in English, and another guy is a little more proficient in English. So similarly, think that you maybe can imagine a situation, a hypothetical situation. The one particular kid was born in India, and his father was transferred for some job to France in very early age of that guy or girl. Maybe at the age of 2, he migrated to France and then took admission to a school there. So gradually that kid will also acquire a very good proficiency in the French language because he needs to survive in that environment. He's a hard
Sir, are you changing the slides?
No, I'm not changing the slide. I'm just giving a narration, not changing. Thank you for your observation. Okay. So that little kid will be very proficient into French language. But one particular, another kid who was born on the same day and staying in India maybe, or West Bengal, he or she is not exposed to the language. He or she doesn't need to acquire the French language. That's why they are not proficient in that language. So some qualities we have that we need to acquire to adapt ourselves, to survive in that environment, those we can call adaptive quality. And some of the quality we just got by birth. We are not related to anything to adapt to the environment. Those are called innate. So these are the qualities we are talking about, innate and adaptive. So now we will be switching to immunity, innate and adaptive immunity. Now I have changed the slide. I hope the slide changes. Okay, so immunity could be classified into innate and adaptive. Fine. Innate immunity we call they gives the first line of defense against infection. Although you will see later that literally that is not true, but more or less. So I have given a picture over here about the border security force. So our BSF, so you can see has a line is called India's first line of defense. So what they do, they protect our borders from the enemies. Okay, so they're only the first line. If enemy attacks, they will try to defend. If they fails, then we have our military, our navy, our air force, etc. And different category of battalions to that. Second line, third line, something like that. So they're the first line. So innate immunity is also could be considered as the first line of defense against any type of microbial infection. Okay, so the main peculiarity or main important characteristics is that most component of the innate immunity are present before the onset of infection. So it doesn't matter at all whether you are exposed to that particular type of microorganism ever in your life or not. Okay, so it doesn't matter where you are born. So you know that some of the people who are born and raised in India, there we sometimes say, I'll tell you a small story. In our early, when we were in the school going kids or just in early days in the college, so cricket teams from Australia and England, they used to come to play to Kolkata and Delhi, etc. So let's take the example of Kolkata. Used to come to play to Kolkata in Eden Gardens, Test cricket. And at that time, the security was not that much tight. So they have the liberty to go around in the city places. They want to explore the city very naturally. They came here for a game, and they want to explore the city as well in the rest day or before the test starts. And at that time, they used to have a very much interested about the street foods or local foods. Okay, that is also quite obvious and necessary because Kolkata is very much famous for its street foods. And the next day or day after that, it was found once or twice it has happened that 7 of the first 11 of the Australian and England cricket team cannot play the test because all of them are suffering from diarrheal disease. Okay, so you see, we are taking that same street food years after years and not having much problem. But the same people, the same human being, same Homo sapiens, just because they're coming from Australia or England doesn't mean they're not different human being. Same human being, they're coming here having the same food and then suffering from severe diarrheal disease. Okay, so they cannot adapt to the situation. Lots of microbes are involved in those foods, cannot. But here, in case of innate, even before the onset of infection, that particular immunity is already with you. Doesn't matter whether you're an Australian or English or American or Indian. Okay, and constitute a set of disease resistance mechanisms that are not specific to a particular pathogen. If you remember, I said before that one of the key characteristics of immunity is actually specificity. They're very specific to a particular pathogen. If you have the immunity, you have seen in case of COVID, so somebody has the immunity against alpha variant, here we see may succumb to the delta variant. Okay, the same pathogen, same SARS-CoV-2, but just because of two different pathogens, they are not getting the full immunity. So it's very specific. But in case of innate, it's not specific at all. So it's just a generalized protection, not specific to any particular pathogen. And second thing is that, or first thing, that present before the onset of infection. Present before the onset of infection and not specific to any particular pathogen. That is the two important characteristics over here about the components of innate immunity. Okay. Phagocytic cell, we have seen in the last class or last to last class, like macrophages, neutrophil, then also some barriers we have, such as our skin, and we'll see other things as well, and a variety of antimicrobial compound. That means a compound which can kill microbes, synthesized by the host, all play important roles in the innate immunity. So phagocytic cells, such as macrophage and neutrophils, some barriers such as skin and others you will see, and different types of antimicrobial components that is being synthesized by our cells plays very important role in terms of innate immunity. So two things for sure, present before the onset of the infection and not specific to any particular pathogen. Okay. Innate immunity can be broadly classified into 4 types of defensive barrier. The names are kind of easy, you'll be able to remember that. Anatomic, physiologic, phagocytic, and inflammatory. 4 types of innate immunity: anatomic, physiologic, phagocytic, and inflammatory. We will try to analyze one after another with some examples. Anatomic, physiologic, phagocytic, and inflammatory. First, anatomic barrier. Okay. Also, sometimes it can be called as physical barrier. So, physical and anatomic barrier that tend to prevent the entry of the pathogen. So, our anatomic barrier, our physical barrier is trying to prevent entry of any type of pathogen inside our body. Maybe I mentioned before that you can imagine that we are actually swimming in a ocean of microorganisms. Microorganism is everywhere. The mouse you are touching is full of microbes. The phone you are touching right now is full of microbes. If you have glasses, There are a lot of microbes up there. The table, chair, the ocean, the water you are drinking, okay, everywhere. So you are kind of surrounded by the microorganisms all the time. But most of the time, they cannot entry into our body because there are very less number of openings. Okay. Now, physical barrier or anatomic barrier prevents the entry. What are those barriers? Skin. If you look into the skin, skin is kind of a wrapping thing. So our whole body, all internal organ or muscle, everything is wrapped with skin. So skin is a barrier. Any microorganism just cannot enter through a skin. It's a barrier. Also, we have mucosal surface. We will see the mucosal surface. So skin and mucosal surface are very important anatomic barrier which prevents the entry of the pathogen. Let's think about the skin first. Usually, our skin could be generally divided into three distinct layers: epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. Forget about the hypodermis for the times of sec. Let's see epidermis and dermis. Epidermis is the upper layer, which mostly composed of dried cell. So maybe you know that every day we lose millions of skin cells. Okay, if you just hover your hand over another hand, actually you are removing thousands of dead skin cells. Okay, so those are the epidermal layer cell, and we do not feel any pain for that. And I just give you a very fun information over here. So one of the major source of your house dust is actually dead cells of all your family members. So we are contributing the dust. So you are sweeping the floor and you are gathering lots of dust every day. One of the significant portion of the dust is actually coming from our dead skin cells that we are shedding every day. Okay. But if you go into the little deeper, then you'll find the dermis layer. Okay. So these are the dermis layer. So our epidermis layer ends over here, more or less. Dermis layer, you can see we have the blood vessel, the artery, the veins, the nerve, etc. That's why we do not feel much pain if anything happens into the epidermis layer. Okay, no blood is coming out, not feeling much pain. But if it goes into the deeper, if the injury is a little deeper, if it hits this layer, then blood will ooze out. Okay, so because it is touching the dermis layer. So thinner outer layer and then thicker dermis layer. Fine. Now, this dermis layer, not only it has only the connective tissues of blood and the blood vessel, etc. It also has hair follicles like this, hair follicles, and also sebaceous gland and the sweat gland. The sweats are coming from the glands, and hair also are originating from those places. So you can see, this is the sebaceous gland and this is the hair follicle. Okay, the roots are, the hair is here and the hair is going out. Okay. Now, what is sebaceous gland and what is sebum? So all of you maybe suffered from the problem especially in your teenage time, or maybe still suffering from the blackheads or whiteheads problem in your face. Okay. So if you press those heads, you will find that something is coming out. Okay. What are those things and what are the purpose? Those things are known as sebum. Okay. So those are coming out through this sebaceous gland, from this sebaceous gland, from the dermis layer to the upper hair. Okay.
স্যার আমাদের কেটে গেলে যে রক্তটা বের হয় সেটা তো স্যার ডার্মিস লেয়ারটা, তাই তো?
Yes, of course. Unless
তাহলে স্যার অনেক ক্ষেত্রে আমরা চুল টেনে তুলি, সেক্ষেত্রে অনেক সময় রক্ত বের হয় না, তো সেটা কেন স্যার?
চুল টেনে তুলো, তুমি যদি কাঁচা চুল টেনে তুলো ভীষণ লাগবে,
লাগে, কিন্তু স্যার কিছুতেই রক্ত বের হয় না।
না, ওখানে রক্ত বেরোবে না, because it's coming from the hair follicle and at that portion there is no blood vessel. That's a good question. There is no blood vessel at this layer. So you are just rooting up this root, the hair from this area. But we have the nerve ending here. That's why you are feeling the pain. ঠিক আছে, আলাদা পকেট করা আছে এখানে, এই পকেট থেকে তোমার হেয়ারটা উপড়ে যাচ্ছে, So you're feeling the pain because this layer is full with nerve endings. But in that particular place, there is no blood vessel. Kintu, বোঝা গেছে? But if we poke the skin with a pin, maybe a little bit, you will not feel much pain at the upper layer.
নার্ভাল এন্ডগুলো থাকে সেই জন্য স্যার
Yes.
পেইনটা হয়।
Yes, nerve end. There is nerve end থাকলে সেখানে আমাদের পেন হবে। কিন্তু if we are cutting the hair from this area, as we usually do, we do not feel any pain because there is no nerve ending. But it's very difficult to avoid the dermis layer if you are trying to poke with the skin with the pin, because epidermis layer is very thin. Okay, so we're talking about the sebum. So that oily secretion that is coming out from the sebaceous gland is called sebum. Okay, but sebum has a purpose, and sebum has a characteristic. The main constituent of sebum is two different types of acid. Please mute yourself. Thank you. So sebum consists two different types of acid, lactic acid and fatty acid. Now maybe you have a little bit of idea about the pH. pH, or power of hydrogen, is a measure of anything liquid which has a acidity or basicity. So if something has a pH of 6.57 range, then you can call it a neutral. If the pH is less than that, less than 6, then you can call it acidic. And if it is more than 7, then you can call it basic. So the sebum, as it constituted material is lactic acid and fatty acid, its pH of the skin becomes at the range of 3 to 5. That means quite acidic. So pH of our skin is actually acidic. The question is, so what? The question is that, as I said, you are kind of swimming in the ocean of microbes. So now if the microbes, so your skin is an exposed portion. You cannot prevent your skin from the exposure to the microbes unless you are wearing some protective clothes, etc. But those microbes will come into the contact of the skin, but they will not be able to grow because the skin pH is at the range of 3 to 5. And microbes do not like that much of acidic pH. It's too acidic. So they will not be able to grow, and subsequently they will die. So unknowingly, you do not know, but your skin is providing your barrier. Most of the microorganism will not be able to survive. But you have seen, just extra information for you here, fun information. Severe infections takes place sometime in the skin in a form of acne. Okay, that because microbes are sometimes become so intelligent. What they did, some type of microbes evolved who can use this sebum as their food. So they thrive there very easily and create a nuisance, create an acne type of problem, infection. But that's an exceptional thing. So mostly sebum is a product coming out from the sebaceous gland in the dermis layer of the skin. Its pH ranges from 3 to 5, and that pH is good enough to inhibit the growth of the most of the microorganisms. Okay. On the other hand, as I said, you can imagine your skin as a wrapping over your whole body. So unless there is a break, no microorganisms could be enter. So if you've got a break somewhere, you've got a cut by accidentally, when you're playing outside, you got a break or something like that. So you may have been, you have heard this type of phrase. People are saying, if you got a deep cut or something like that, oh, we have to take precautions, maybe you'll get infection, something like that. So once there is a break, remember, you're swimming in the ocean of microbes. Now it's an opportunity for the microbes to enter through that break. So you have got a break over here, say for example, a cut, and now microbes, it'd be easier for the microbes to enter your body through that break. Okay. Otherwise, another thing is that different types of vectors, say for example, mosquito. What mosquito do? they poke into our skin and this sucks the blood. So mosquito has no interest to make us sick. Okay, no interest to infect us. They are just here to get some blood, which is necessary for the reproduction. But different types of parasites or bacteria, you can take the example of the protozoa, of the malarial protozoa, Plasmodium vivax. They actually resides in the salivary gland. And when the mosquito takes a blood meal, that Plasmodium vivax is entering. That means Plasmodium vivax protozoa was looking for a place, looking for a hole to enter into the skin. That hole is very, very small, and that is an opportunity. So anyway, if you get a break over your skin, then that's a problem. Then the microbes will be able to enter. And one classical example of the protozoan mosquito, malarial protozoan over here. Okay, so that was about the skin. Mostly there are other things as well. Now we'll see about some mucosal surface. So as I said you that if our whole body is mostly wrapped with the skin, then what are the openings we have? We have to be careful about the openings, because those openings, the bacteria or fungus or virus, they will try to enter into the body through those openings. So one of the main openings is our eye. That is a very delicate organ. You cannot keep your eyes shut 24 hours. Most of the time, eyes are open. That means it's getting exposed to the air, and air is full of microbes. Number two, alimentary canal, through which our food material enters into our body. So you are eating different types of foods. Maybe you're cooking, sometimes you're getting it raw. So different types of microbes are associated with those food, and they're entering here. So this is another way of the microbes are getting the chance to enter into your body. One over here and another over here. Third thing, respiratory tract. There's also another opening through your nose. So you are breathing every moment. You cannot survive without breathing. And air is full of microbes. We know very much about this after this COVID situation. So now microbes are entering through your nasal opening as well. The fourth one is urogenital tract. That tract also has openings. And if there is openings, that means microbes also can enter through those openings as well. So the conjunctive, the alimentary canal, the respiratory tract, the urogenital tract, all are very vulnerable place through which microbes can enter into our body. So what type of protection we have here? We have the mucous membrane. All these conjunctive, alimentary, etc. are lined by mucous membrane. So you have seen that you are coughing, just generally for something, and some mucus is coming out. You can feel it a very nasty thing. Why is that mucus is coming out? But mucus is actually very important for several different reasons. But in terms of immunology, mucus is very important, because mucus, along with saliva and tears, are actually working as a washing away different types of microbes or invaders. So microbes are coming out, and you can think that mucus is actually a bucket of water which is continuously washing them out from that place. Let's take an example over here. So some microbes have entered through a food into the food pipes. Then what the mucous membrane will do, the entire pipe is full of mucus. The mucus will wash them away to the stomach. Okay. So most of the time, 90% of the bacteria or other microorganism will die at the stomach because of the very high acidity. Okay. So they're washing away. So you can compare them with a bucket of water. Similarly, for our eyes, we have tears. Tears are very, very important. Tears also do the same thing. So if your eyes are somehow dry, it happens in the old age time or due to some disease. then that's a problem. Dried eye is a big problem because your eye will losing mucus, losing tears, and that means you are losing the potential to fight against microorganism. So you will be suffering from different type of eye infection all the time. So saliva, tears, and mucous secretions act to wash away potential invaders and also contain antibacterial or antiviral substances as well. The viscous fluid called the mucus, which is secreted by the epithelial cell of the mucous membrane, also entraps foreign microorganism. Trap means ফাঁদ. So ফাঁদ পেতে microorganism ধরার মতো এত থকথকে হয় বলে viscous বলে it can also entrap foreign microorganism. So mucus one hand it can wash away the microorganism, and the other hand it can also entrap the foreign microorganism. So foreign microorganism cannot go from one place to another. They will eventually they will die. Okay. Now, if you look into the respiratory tract, maybe you have heard from the doctors, they're talking about upper respiratory tract infection or lower respiratory tract infection. Okay. So generally, when you suffer from any kind of respiratory disease, such as influenza, etc., generally the first few days, it was limited to the upper respiratory tract. So kind of these places. So all the virus bacteria mostly entered through this route and sitting over here. So you're feeling different type of discomfort, coughing, etc. So at this point, the infection, you can say the early stage. So if you are not going to the doctor, not taking to the medicine, taking any medicine, there's a chance that these microorganisms will then go into the lower respiratory tract, and that's a problem because in the lower respiratory tract it is a very high chance that it will affect our lungs. Okay, and at that time you will feel severe infection which can convert to pneumonia. Okay, so protecting our lower respiratory tract is very, very important. We can deal with upper respiratory tract infection for a couple of days, not a big deal. But lower respiratory tract is very important. Now, in the lower respiratory tract, we already, of course, we have the mucus, but apart from mucus, we also have cilia. Cilia is hair-like projections or protrusions of the epithelial cell membrane. You can think these as a broom or jhata. So previously, we had mucus secretion, which is working as a water. Now we also have the broom or jhata in the form of cilia. So what will happen? Synchronous movement of the cilia. These cilia will move in a synchronous, means together. Sorry, together. So now mucus membrane.
সবাইকে একটু অ্যাটেন্ডই করে দিন না, নাহলে রিমুভ করে দিচ্ছে।
কে রিমুভ করে দিচ্ছে? না, অ্যাটেন্ডই করা যাবে না। অ্যাটেন্ড আমি যখন করব তখন। Just attend, be attentive about the class. The synchronous movement of cilia propels mucus entrapped microorganism from these tracts. So now we have broom, we also have the water. Both these things we have in our weaponry, so we can easily remove the microorganism from the lower respiratory tract. So these are also part of the innate immunity. Everybody has this type of defense against microorganism. Okay. Okay. So this particular thing, maybe I mentioned in the very first class or so that immunology becomes very important. The reason behind is that here we are dealing with two different types of alive things. One is we, the higher animals, we are alive, we have immune cells, they are very much alive, and we are fighting against microorganisms, and those are also alive. So as we want to survive in this world, microorganism also wants to survive. So now if you are adopting some strategy to kill the microorganism, then microorganisms will also adopt some strategy to save them. So those are called counter strategy adopted by the microorganism. Just one example, influenza virus has a surface molecule that enables it to attach firmly to the cells in the mucous membrane of the respiratory tract. So you are thinking that you have mucous membrane that will help you from the influenza virus, but influenza virus has developed a surface molecule through which they can attach to that mucous membrane, and they will not be, you will not be able to wash away. You may have liters and liters of mucus, but influenza virus will remain there attached because they have developed a surface molecule. Okay, so now we will move into the physiological barrier. But before physiological barrier, I will give you the attendance, but do not make any such request ever again. When I will decide to give you the attendance, I will provide the link. Otherwise, stick your conversation about the academics, about the studies, not attendance. I do not want to hear any discussion about the attendance unless you can only tell me that you're having a network issue or anything. You could not do, you didn't get the link, etc. Otherwise, I will decide when I will give you the attendance. And if you're being removed, join the group again. Am I clear?
স্যার অ্যাটেন্ডি করে দিলে অসুবিধাটা হতো না।
Attendee, আমি প্রথম দিনই বলেছি, I do not know how to do the attendee. Do it. Either guide me or you do it. How to do that? Just tell me. You can share your screen as well if you wish. How to do that? Just tell me. I will do that. Anybody? Where I will get the option to make you attendee?
স্যার অ্যাপে খুললে বলতে পারতাম, মানে
only showing two hand. কেউ বলছো বলো?
যদি অ্যাপটা খুলতেন।
স্যার ওই তিনটে বাটন প্রেস করুন, ওই হ্যান্ড রেজের পাশে,
হ্যান্ডের পাশে তিনটেতে করলাম, বলো।
ওখানে ডিভাইস সেটিং বলে কোনো অপশন আছে?
আছে, হ্যাঁ, শো ডিভাইস সেটিং এ গেলাম।
হ্যাঁ স্যার, গিয়ে ওখানে দেখুন অনলি মি করবে, ওইখানে দেখুন হু ক্যান শেয়ার।
সেটা তো ডিভাইস সেটিং এ, ডিভাইসে আমার অডিও ক্যামেরা এগুলো আছে।
তার মিটিং সেটিংস বলে কিছু আছে?
মিটিং সেটিং অন কর, প্রাইভেট ভিউ করা আছে,
ওটা রিমুভ করে দিন।
ওটাকে অফ করে দেবো। অ্যালাউ পার্টিস, এটা তো প্রাইভেট, হ্যাঁ মিটিং সেটিংস অফ করে দাও। তার লেখা আছে allow participants to move through shared presentation on their own. So I cannot allow that.
রুমে হচ্ছে তো, অ্যাপে হলে স্যার করে দিন। স্যার একবার তিনটে বাটন প্রেস করুন, একবার দেখি।
করলাম, তারপরে বলো। টুগেদার মোড, হ্যালো
স্যার।
হ্যাঁ বলো
স্যার শো মিটিং ডিটেইলস একবার যান।
শো মিটিং ডিটেইলস এ গেলাম, সেখানে তো শুধু আজকে মিটিং এর টাইম, ডেট এগুলো লেখা আছে। নিচে আছে মাইক্রোসফট টিম মিটিং, ক্লিক হিয়ার টু জয়েন দ্য মিটিং, লার্ন মোর মিটিং অপশনস। অপশনস এ যাও, অপশনস, ক্যান ইউ হিয়ার মি? শুনতে পাচ্ছ? অপশনস আছে অলওয়েজ লেট কলার্স বাইপাস দ্য লবি, অ্যানাউন্স when callers to join or leave. হ্যাঁ,
উই হু ক্যান প্রেজেন্ট আছে না, এভরিওয়ান।
কোনটাতে বলছো?
স্যার হু ক্যান প্রেজেন্ট যেটা আছে ওটা এভরিওয়ান করা আছে, ওটা আপনি অনলি মি করে দিন।
আচ্ছা, হু ক্যান প্রেজেন্টটাতে আমি অনলি মি করে দিলাম, করে দিয়েছি। আর কিছু চেঞ্জ করব? allow mic for attendees, allow camera for attendees, allow reactions of yes করা আছে, তো সেভ করে দিচ্ছি। ঠিক আছে,
এটা সেভ করে দিন।
সেভ করে দিলাম। ওকে, ডান। নাও আই উইল বি, ওকে, নাও আই উইল বি গিভিং ইউ, এটা কি প্রত্যেক দিনই করতে হবে আলাদা প্রত্যেকটা মিটিং এ নাকি?
ইয়েস স্যার।
Okay, ঠিক আছে. I will try to remember that. Okay, now it's 7:15, so I'm giving you time to complete the attendance. I'm sharing the link. Finish your attendance. I'll be back in 5 minutes time. Okay, let's talk about the next barrier. So remember we said that there are 4 barriers: anatomic, physiologic, inflammatory, and phagocytic. So just confirm 1 second that you can hear me and see the slides. দেখতে পাচ্ছ স্লাইডটা?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So next is physiologic barrier. Physiologic barrier that contribute to innate immunity includes body temperature, pH, and various soluble and cell-associated molecules. So there's a classic example is for chickens. So we have said before about the Louis Pasteur's work on anthrax bacteria, which was mainly affecting the cattle. But this anthrax bacteria cannot infect chickens because chickens or all other birds have a high body temperature, and that body temperature is not suitable for the anthrax bacteria to grow. That's why anthrax cannot survive on chickens. They cannot infect the chickens. So here, the body temperature, one physiologic parameter, is helping the chicken to provide to getting immunity against the anthrax bacteria. So that's the, you can say, generalized way that many species are not susceptible to certain disease simply because their normal body temperature inhibits the growth of the pathogen. So there are several bacteria are there who do not like 37 degrees centigrade temperature, which is a normal body temperature of human being. 98.5 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees centigrade, that is our body temperature generally. Okay. So those bacteria who do not like 37 degrees centigrade or do not can survive 37 degrees centigrade will not be able to infect us. So we are protected from them. Okay. So even in the winter time, always our body temperature remains 37 degree constant. That needs to be maintained always. There are different types of ways to maintain that. Okay. So similarly, another one is pH. Once again, the acidity, gastric acidity. Our stomach is full of gastric juice, and those juice are very acidic. It's a hydrochloric acid. Okay, so sometime maybe you have experienced. I'm pretty sure that at some point of life you have all experienced reflux. That is, the gastric juice is coming out, coming through the alimentary canal to your mouth. That happens basically when we suffer from a digestion problem, and that tastes terrible because it's so acidic. We feel terrible. It can kind of get a burning sensation in our throat area because those are highly acidic, and our throat and mouth do not like at all. But our stomach is full of gastric juices that helps us in digesting food. Now, microorganism cannot survive at that low pH thing. So gastric acidity is also an innate physiological barrier to infection because very few ingested microorganisms can survive the low pH of the stomach content. So maybe you are having some raw food material. You didn't wash it properly, but you are not suffering from the disease. Most of the time, we are not suffering from any infection. Okay, it's not that we used to wash our hand several times in a day before the COVID. It's not that we used to use the sanitizer all the time, but we used to suffer from infection or severe infection seldom. Not very often. The reason is that we have the immunity, and one type of innate immunity is gastric acidity that is protecting us from all those bacteria associated with the food material. Okay, so temperature, gastric acidity is two things of the physiological barrier of innate immunity. Third one is lysozyme. Lysozyme is an enzyme. Okay, so maybe you know about the enzyme. Enzyme is kind of a protein which degrades different biomolecules like proteins especially, and also carbohydrate. So this hydrolytic enzyme lysozyme found in the mucus secretion and in tears. As I said, our eyes are very vulnerable. We have to keep our eyes always open, and it's getting exposed to the air and also sometimes water. So tons of microorganisms are trying to infect our eyes. And apart from mucus secretion, our eyes have an enzyme called lysozyme. Okay. Now what the lysozyme is doing? Lysozyme can degrade or destroy a peptidoglycan layer of the bacterial cell. So bacterial cell, this is a bacterial cell membrane structure. You have a phospholipid over here. This is the inner side, and this is the outer side. We have the outer membrane. And in between, we have a peptidoglycan layer. One particular type of carbohydrate is known as peptidoglycan. Now, this lysozyme enzyme can degrade. It breaks up beta-1,4 linkage, but that is not the biochemistry thing. I'm not going into detail of that thing. So if peptidoglycan layer is destroyed, that means bacteria will die. Their outer membrane will be totally degraded. So microorganisms are coming in contact with our eyes all the time, but as our eyes is secreting lysozyme, their peptidoglycan layer is getting destroyed and they are dying. So lysozyme is also another weapon that is we have in our arsenal that can protect us from different types of bacteria, invading bacteria or other microorganisms. So temperature, gastric acidity, and lysozyme, these are the three main components of the physiologic barrier of the innate immunity. Now, I will come a little bit deviate from the main topic, because you see, I have said before that adaptive immunity is very specific. It can recognize and memorize. I give an example of that. You have a party and somebody crashed your party. Okay, so you remember his or her face, and the next time after 3 months you're throwing a party and that same person is trying to enter into your party uninvited, then you will be able to recognize that person very quickly and you will kick him out from the party very easily. Innate immunity, I said that they do not have any specificity. They do not have any memory. That's a stark difference from the adaptive immunity we'll see. Then how they are understanding that this is our molecule and this is a foreign molecule. Say, take the example of the peptidoglycan layer. There is a possibility, and there is lots of our own biomolecule also has peptidoglycan. Say our red blood cell has some peptidoglycan. Now, our ears also has blood vessels are there, and lysozyme enzyme is there. So if somehow that red blood cell comes into contact of the lysozyme, then lysozyme will be able to destroy the peptidoglycan layer of our blood cell, and blood cell will die. Okay, but that will be a devastating thing. If blood supply do not reach to our eyes, if no oxygen is reaches to our eye cells, then our eye cells will die. Okay, so there must be a way by which our innate immunity also can recognize that which cell or which biomolecule is ours and which is not ours or foreign. For that, they use this type of pattern recognition thing. So maybe you all know about this pattern recognition thing. In nowadays, if you have a digital camera or mobile phone, you see this type of square. It's asking you to tag your friends. Okay, so you see here what is happening. There's been programmed that this is the way a human face should be. More or less, this is the way. There different types of options has been given. That could be a long face, could be oval, squared, round, but these are the features will be there. That's been coded in this way. So you see in this picture, this software is getting full profile of these two girls, but only getting a partial profile of this. But still, it can recognize it's a human being. Okay, it could be your friend. You can tag her. But imagine we have a dog over here. This software will not recognize that as a human being. So it can differentiate between human being or not human being. A dog, a cat, or anything else, a chair or furniture, it will never say you, but showing a chair that can you want to tag it, because pattern recognition software is in place. Similarly, in case of innate immunity also, we have a pattern recognition thing. Many of the molecules involved in the innate immunity have the property of pattern recognition, that ability to recognize a given class of molecules. What is the logic that is working over here? Very simply, innate immunity do not understand anything. Do not understand what is bacteria, what is virus, and what is fungal, etc. Cannot distinguish between E. coli or Salmonella, Staphylococcus, different types of bacteria. Do not know about different variant or strains of a particular bacteria or virus. Only couple of things, couple of logic they have, that I will be looking whether these particular molecules are present on the cell or not. The reason is that microbes, that means bacteria, virus, fungus, protozoa, etc., they have some unique molecules which are not present in any multicellular organism like us. Okay, some unique molecules. So you can call them the molecules, say example P, molecules Q, and molecules R. So innate immune system understands that P, Q, R, these three molecules should not be present in a host organism or multicellular organism. So anything, if it is showing P, Q, or R, then it must be a foreign organism, and I have to kill it. So that's why our RBC, our WBC, if even they have the same peptidoglycan, our lysozyme enzyme, etc., will not attack those, because innate immunity molecule will see, okay, this is a red blood cell and it's not showing PQ or R, so it must be our own. I will not touch, I will not damage the cell. But if a bacteria, E. coli, enters, immediately it will see or recognize the pattern, okay, it has P plus Q, or maybe only P, or maybe P plus Q plus R, all three, then it must be a foreign organism, kill it. Okay, so this way. So then you see there is no need to recognize whether it's E. coli or Salmonella or virus or bacteria. It's a foreign thing and kill it. So there are certain types of molecules that are unique to microbes and never found in the multicellular organism. The ability to immediately recognize and combat the invaders displaying such molecule is a strong feature of the innate immunity. So it's a kind of identity card. So if you're thinking about a gated community apartment complex where the security person has been instructed that you will only allow persons who can show a valid identity card. So all the resident has a valid identity card. So they are showing it to the security person and security person allowing them inside. But if somebody, some vendors cannot produce the identity card, then the security person will not allow them to enter. It has advantages and disadvantages too, but that maybe we'll discuss somewhere else. But this is general pattern, general trend, general way to protect ourselves by recognizing the pattern recognition. Okay. So now let's move into the third barrier. Anatomic and physiologic we're done with. Now phagocytic barrier. I do not have much to say about the phagocytic barrier because I discussed a phagocytic barrier in different contexts before. Phagocytosis means mechanism of the ingestion of extracellular particulate material. We have seen the example how the phagocytic cells is ingesting and destroying particulate material through the text, figure, and also through a movie. We know that we have some specialized cells, white blood cells, known as neutrophil, monocytes, and macrophage, the giant cells, which are very much involved in terms of phagocytosis. We also know that whenever infection happens, these are the cells, macrophage and neutrophil, rush to that place for the first. Okay, they're the first to reach to that place because all the time this macrophage and neutrophil, mostly macrophage, they are roaming around inside our body through blood and also through the lymph. They're trying to reach every corner of our body. They're looking for any microorganism, and if they have any, they're finding any microorganism, they will try to ingest those microorganisms and kill them. So this is called phagocytosis. Okay. So phagocytosis is also a type of endocytosis. If you have studied that in your cell biology class in higher secondary, it's called endocytosis and exocytosis, two different processes. So it comes under the endocytosis. Now, just once again, recapitulate our previous discussion. A phagocytosis, a cell plasma membrane extend around the particulate material. The particulate material here is the bacteria. They are ingesting, forming the phagosome. Then lysosome is fusing with it and forming the phagolysosome, getting destroyed, and finally it's been pushed out of the cell through the process of exocytosis. So that is called the phagocytic barrier or phagocytosis. Okay, so I'm forgetting something to mention over here. Okay, so what happens in terms of injury? So maybe say you got an injury. So let's see, this is your hand and you got a injury in some portion of your hand and you didn't treat it well. Okay, so what you may observe after certain days that pus is oozing, যেটাকে আমরা বাংলায় বলি পুঁজ, pus is oozing. So what is going on there? Okay, okay, I can discuss it later also in the next barrier. If we do not find that information, then we'll come back to that. Okay, so this is the phagocytic barrier. The fourth one is called inflammation. Inflammation, the word nowadays were used very much. It was not very much common in the last in 10 years or 15 years back. But now we have now had something, some scratching sensation in our throat. We call inflammation. Okay. So what is inflammation? Tissue damage caused by a wound or by an invading pathogenic microorganism induces a complex sequence of events collectively known as inflammatory response. So you can imagine that this particular person, what might have happened to his or her fingers. There's a chance that accidentally this person got hurt at this portion of his finger, or maybe there is some openings in the nail area through which some microorganism entered. Okay, so either by wound or by invading pathogenic microorganism, or the pathogenic microorganism invaded due to wound, then what is happening? There are complex sequence of events takes place. We will not go into those complexity, but that is called inflammatory response. You will see this type of thing. What also else also you'll see? You will see that this area is becoming very tender and you're feeling a pain sensation. If you touch that place, you will see that place a little bit of warmer than the other parts of the body. So feeling pain, a little warmer, and also you will see the area is becoming reddish in compared to the other area. Okay, and you are not. So if you imagine this is not actually, but if you imagine this is an index finger or your thumb, you cannot hold the pain properly. That is also a problem. So feeling pain, temperature increase, becoming red, and you cannot use that particular finger properly. Okay. So
স্যার
that's
কখনো
why
কখনো ব্লু হয় কেন ওটা?
ব্লু হয় সেটা হচ্ছে ব্লাডটা ওখানে জমে থাকে বলে এবং সেটা ব্লাডটা বেরোতে পারে না বলে, যেটাকে আমরা ব্লাডটা আস্তে আস্তে নষ্ট হয়ে যায়। ওখান থেকে ব্লাডটা না বেরোতে পারলে কালো হয়। ব্ল্যাক
তো
ইজ
আবার
ব্লু।
ওটা ঠিক হয় কি করে স্যার?
ব্লাডটা অ্যাবজর্বড হয়ে যায় টিস্যুতে, ভেতরে ভেতরে ব্লাডটা টিস্যুতে অ্যাবজর্বড হয়ে যায়। এবং কিন্তু যদি অনেকটা বেশি ব্লাড থাকে তখন সার্জিক্যাল অপারেশন করে ব্লাডটাকে বের করে দিতে হয়। ঠিক আছে, যেটা ডিঅক্সিজেনেটেড ব্লাড ওখানে জমে আছে সে কারণে। Okay, so that's why in the 1st century AD, a Roman physician Celsius, whose name described 4 cardinal signs. Cardinal means important signs of inflammation. That is called redness. I forgot to mention about the swelling. Redness, swelling, heat, and pain. So these are the 4 things you will notice if you are getting an inflammation anywhere. But later, 100 years later, another physician known as Galen, he also added the sign loss of function. As I was just mentioning, that you will not be able to move your finger properly. Only I'm talking about the finger because I have taken this example. So that is also another symptom. So the symptom of inflammation, or 5 cardinal signs of inflammations are redness, swelling, heat, pain, and loss of function. Okay, and how this is happening? That can happen due to an injury or due to invading microorganism, or maybe the microorganism invaded due to the injury, followed by injury. Due to the injury, you got a cut, there is some openings up there, and now the microorganism are invading at that place. So this is called inflammation. That is also an innate immunity barrier. Now you might wonder that we are having some problem. Where is it getting the protection? It's not protecting us. Okay, but that is not true. Now what happens? First of all, why it is becoming red? Okay, so it's called a vasodilation. Vasodilation means the increase in the diameter of blood vessel occurs as a vessel that carry blood away from the affected area constricted, resulting in increase in blood flow. So this particular area, the diameter of the blood vessel, that means veins and arteries, mostly the veins here, that diameter become increased. So this area, say, due to the infection, become very constricted, and blood cannot pass through this area very well. So the area before that, so you can imagine this was a healthy blood vessel. Okay, fine. This is a healthy blood vessel. Now, due to the inflammation reaction, blood vessel become very constricted at this point. So very difficult to draw. So the area before that blood vessel got inflamed because lots of blood are there. But your canal is become so restricted, blood cannot pass through. So this area is becoming very much inflated. Lots of blood are got collected at that place. That's why getting a red sign. So red sign is nothing but a blood presence of extra amount of blood at that area due to the increase in the blood vessel known as vasodilation. And the clinical term, this is called erythema. Engorged capillaries are responsible for tissue redness, also known as erythema. So just if you look into the prescription of a doctor, they will write it erythema. in the left finger, left hand, second finger or something like that. So erythema means vasodilation or redness of that area that is happening due to the inflammation. Second one is swelling. Okay, swelling, the second symptom. Increase in capillary permeability facilitates an influx of fluid and cells from the engorged capillaries into the tissue, accumulation of fluid. So capillary permeability. So you know the blood capillaries, blood, vein and artery, after going close to the tissue or cell, they becomes very small. So these are the vein, and then when they are reaching to the tissue space, become very small capillaries. Okay? Very small capillaries. Now these capillaries permeability, that means how much amount of these are our cells forming a tissue. Okay. So how much water or other minerals like sodium, potassium, etc. will enter into the tissue, that is very tightly controlled or regulated. Now, due to this inflammation, this capillary permeability increases. That's why lots of water enters into the tissue space, and this place becomes swells up. So if you press with your finger, you will see that it is going deep down. Usually now if you press your finger in any place of your leg or hand or anything, it will come back. It will get a bounce. You cannot push it very easily. But when there's an inflammation, you can do it easily, just because lots of fluids have accumulated in this area. So when fluids have accumulated due to the increase of capillary permeability, it is called edema. So that is also another clinical term. So erythema is a redness and edema is the swelling. Any type of swelling of our body in clinical terms is known as edema. Okay, so we have seen two different things, how that is happening. Now what is happening? So influx of phagocytes from the capillaries. We have seen in the last slide here, I tried to draw that capillary permeability is increasing. Lots of fluid, mostly water and other types of salts, etc., entering into the tissue space. At the same time, different types of cells, phagocytic cells, are also entering into that space. So you can imagine that this is our blood capillary. We have red blood cell, we have macrophage and neutrophil, and this is our tissue space. So now they are entering into that place which actually got injured, and these green ones you can imagine as a microorganism present over here. So influx of phagocytes such as macrophage or neutrophil from the capillaries into the tissue is facilitated by the increased permeability of the capillary. So capillary permeability increased, water is entering, that is causing the swelling, but at the same time, phagocytic cell is also entering at that place. As phagocytic cell accumulate at the site, and then what they do, they will ingest or phagocyte those bacteria. Also, they will release different types of enzymes. In a very general or layman terms, you can think a fierce battle or war will go on. So lots of macrophage will try to kill those bacteria. Bacteria will try to move from that place, etc., etc. So what will happen? Lots of dead bacteria will be found, and at the same time, some of our macrophage also will die with time. Some of our healthy cells also will be damaged in the, as you can say, a collateral damage to this war. So a war is going on, a battle is going on between our phagocytic cell and the microorganism. Microorganism will be dead, macrophage will be dead, some of the healthy cells also will be dead. Then where they will go? Those things, those dead cells and the digested material and different types of fluid, those will come out as a pus or pooch. So it is very natural to see that pus is coming out from the injured place after a couple of days. So pus is nothing nasty or anything like that. It is just the dead material, dead macrophage, dead bacteria, dead healthy cells, and also different kinds of fluid. That is a result of a battle that happened between the phagocytic cell and the bacteria. Now, one thing to note over here is that you see this inflammation barrier. So if you think about this one, this step is very annoying for us. We're getting swelling. I do not like the swelling in any place of my body, of course. I do not like this type of redness. I do not like the pain. So all 5 cardinal symptoms of inflammation, if we see, there is no reason to like this redness or swelling or heat or pain or loss of function. So that's why what we do, we take anti-inflammatory medicine, because it's very quite obvious that we want to get some relief from this thing. Anti-inflammatory medicine. And if anti-inflammatory medicine you are taking, then what you are doing, you are actually preventing the natural innate immunity barrier inflammation. You are not allowing this capillary permeability to increase. If you do not allow them, then what will happen? Phagocytes will not be able to enter into that particular tissue space. So maybe you are getting a temporary relief, but actually you are preventing the natural innate immunity barrier of inflammation. So there is quite a possibility that you will suffer from the infection for a longer period of time. You're withdrawing the medicine, you are going back to the same place. So that's why some people argue that if it is possible, you should allow the natural inflammation to take place. There is nothing to be worried about the inflammation. Okay. Only need to be worried about when I'm saying that even after 7 days or something like that, nothing is changing. You're feeling much more pain, etc. That's why at that time you have to take the you have to consult the doctor. Maybe you have to take some antibacterial antibiotics, etc. Otherwise, for a normal small type of injury, you should not take the inflammation unless you have a very less tolerance power, when you do not, you can tolerate a little bit of swelling, little bit of pain. Okay. So these are the 4 cardinal, four innate immunity barrier we discussed about: anatomic, physiologic, phagocytic, as well as inflammation. Okay. So just innate immunity was a main target for this class. I would also like to mention over here about the adaptive immunity a little bit. So far, before today's class, what we discussed mostly about the adaptive immunity. As I said, adaptive immunity means you are not born with this type of immunity most of the time. It depends whether you are exposed to a particular organism, microorganism, or not. If we go back to the same example that we like very much, so say Ebola is a very dangerous viral disease which is mostly endemic or prevalent in a Middle African country, Congo. Okay, so you've never been in Congo. Okay, or you've never been exposed to anybody who recently migrated from Congo. So there is absolutely very less chance that you have any type of immunity against that Ebola. So somehow, if your office said that now you have to go to Congo day after tomorrow for this type of office work, okay, so you went there, and there's a high chance that you will be severely infected with the Ebola virus because you do not have any type of immunity against that. Ebola is just an example. You can think about any organism which is endemic to Congo. So if maybe your age is now 18, 19, 20, whatever. So in this age, you've never been exposed to different kind of organism that are prevalent in different other parts of the world. So you do not have any immunity against those things. Okay. So that is a problem with the adaptive immunity. And that's why those Australian cricket player or those English cricket player, they used to get severely suffer from diarrheal disease. We are born over here. We take the street foods very now and often. Okay. So every day we are getting little doses of those microorganisms. They are in our system. So our immunity can recognize them very well. So that's why even when I'm taking some puchka or something like that from a street side vendor who is not very much good at maintaining hygiene, our immunity can recognize those microorganisms very well and can neutralize them very quickly. But in case of the Australian that player or English player, this is the first time those microorganisms entering into his body. So his immune system is not prepared at all. They have no memory about those particulars. They're seeing for the first time. So it takes a longer period of time to generate antibody. And that time is good enough for the person to suffer from a diarrheal disease. So adaptive immunity is capable of recognizing and selectively eliminating specific foreign organisms. So as I said, you can see the stark difference between the adaptive and innate immunity. So it is selectively eliminating some specific foreign organism. Maybe it's E. coli, maybe Salmonella, maybe Diplococcus, something like that. So there is no general umbrella type of protection. So maybe you have the protection against E. coli, but you do not have the protection against Salmonella. So E. coli protection will not going to help you. So that is a problem, good or bad thing about the adaptive immunity. So unlike innate, adaptive immune responses are not the same in all members of a species. As I'm saying before, that we all are human beings, Indian, Bangladeshi, American, English, Australian, no matter, all have same innate immunity. But we, you, Donald Trump, all us have different adaptive immune response based on the fact where we born, how we born, where in the slum or in a village or in a city, what type of microorganism were exposed so far in our life. That's why one particular microorganism may affect you slightly and may affect me severely. I may be sick severely with that microorganism when you maybe got a little bit of infection for 1 or 2 days. So that is the reason. Maybe you have been exposed to that microorganism before. So you have the adaptive immunity protection against that microorganism. But I do not have that. So even though you and me, both are human beings, we are reacting differently against that specific antigenic challenge. Okay? And adaptive immunity, that's what I say, does not come into play until there is an antigenic challenge to the organism. So unless you are exposed to an antigen, adaptive immunity has nothing to do. But if you see, in case of innate immunity, everything is there. It doesn't matter whether it do not matter at all whether you're exposed to an antigenic challenge or not. You have the tears, you have the saliva, you have the mucous membrane, you have the cilia, you have the phagocytic cells, everything is there. Okay, but adaptive immunity, the main component of it is actually antibody, doesn't come into play unless there is an antigenic challenge. What is the main other thing is the memory. Adaptive immunity responds to the challenge with a high degree of specificity as well as remarkable property of memory. So that particular memory thing is actually used for the vaccine production also, a vaccine rationale. So we'll see when we go to the vaccine thing, how this is being used. Okay, and for adaptive immunity, we have 4 characteristics. That is antigenic specificity, diversity, and immunologic memory and non-self recognition. If you remember a little bit, these 4 characteristics I have mentioned before as the characteristics of lymphocyte. So whatever the lymphocytes attributes, the same attributes also applicable for adaptive immunity. Because B or T, these 2 lymphocytes are actually the main component of the adaptive immunity. Okay, so adaptive immunity, of course, not independent of innate. They work hand in hand because phagocytic cells works as a antigen presenting cells, etc. And on the other hand, innate immunity component also, adaptive immunity component also helps the innate immunity in different way. So we will try to, whatever we will discuss in our subsequent classes, mostly our discussion will be based on the adaptive immunity thing, because so far it was considered that adaptive immunity is much more important in terms of providing us a protection. But that is a debatable thing. Some people are very much very much interested about innate immunity. Actually, most probably we do not know much about the innate immunity or how they're protecting us. We give most probably too much emphasis on the adaptive immunity. But in subsequent classes, we will see different components of adaptive immunity. We'll see about the vaccine development, etc. But that's all for today. Mostly we discussed about the innate immunity is 4 different barriers of the innate immunity, and we discussed the components of those barriers. Okay, so if you have any questions, you can ask at this point. Some of you responded today a little bit, asked some questions. I like those questions. That's very good. So if you have any other questions, you can ask at this point of time. Okay. If you do not have any question, that is also okay. I honor your silence. Very good. So that's all for today. So next we are scheduled to meet on 8th September. So I just said I'm going through a training course. So I'm not sure whether I'll be able to take or not. I will try my best to make some time at this time 6:30 p.m. to take the class. If I cannot, I will let you know one day in advance. Okay. Okay. Say something.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Fine.
Okay, sir.